Good morning, everyone. EagleX from ATX EagleX Gaming here today, and I'm here with a top 8 Nationals deck profile. Here with me on the call, I have my friend Landon, also known as PokeGeek. If you want to say hello and introduce yourself, go for it.
Hello, I'm Landon. I've been a friend of Eagle X Gaming or Zach here ever since mid-college. We went to college together, and we both got introduced to the Digimon card game about the same time, and he's been a great friend to me.
Yep, I was going to say Blue Star Deck Mirrors is what got us into the game.
Hammer Spark was way too good.
Grill him on one cost Evo.
Broken.
Anyways, with that being said, this is us going over what I honestly consider the real Grandis tech for Nats. But with that being said, going to get started with, we already know what Grandis does as a deck. But going into Nats, we had a meta call we were looking at. We did lots of playtesting. I playtested for about 2 to 3 months with a playtest group. I know Landon playtested a good amount with his girlfriend and with some other people locally. But we are looking at potentially being an anti-meta deck because Black Orb is definitely going to be the most respected deck going into Nats, as it has an answer for lots of matchups. But one thing that I was really trying to leverage and find an answer for was that BT5 OmniX, and to help leverage against Melga also, because I predicted those being real popular, which is why we have Rafflesia and Grandil both in the deck. Landon, go ahead and give us your thought process coming up to the tournament, because I know you weren't on Grandis at the start.
So what happened was, as you were saying, yeah, I did do a lot of test playing with my girlfriend, but it's not what you think. I was test playing Black War Greymon constantly against her Grandis, and she was playing this list, which is a list that you came up with, and we'd all talked about a bit. And I could not beat her to save my life. She'd taken like 7 or 8 games in a row from me, and after getting increasingly frustrated, I decided I was just going to switch to this list last second because I expected Black War Greymon to be everywhere as it was the best deck. I wanted to do well at Nationals, so I was planning on taking the best deck. And when I realized that the best deck wasn't performing as well, it was not beating Grandis, and I think Grandis is the only deck in format that has a positive win rate over Black War that isn't some extremely obscure deck.
Yeah, I think Jesmon's the next best deck.
Yeah, like Jesmon and Examon, but those don't do super well against any other decks. A lot of other decks.
The spread, at least.
Yeah, Grandis is the only deck with a great spread that also has a positive matchup against Black War.
Anyways, with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the ideal stack. We won't spend a whole lot of time here, but for anyone who doesn't know, Digiburst twice with Grand Kuwaga, get yourself +2 checks, +2k DP, Digivolve into Grandis for 1, suspend a blocker, swing security, piercing 3 checks, 18k, end attack, restand, swing security again, hybrid game. That's the game plan. That's the ideal stack.
Or bug for short.
Yeah.
Bug.
Yeah, like there's a lot of bug in the deck, and everything really does have a purpose in this deck. But some quick key things come up with 18k DP is your threshold if you're a Grandis with the Yoko buff. It's very common that you'll swing over everything relevant in the format. Your Kokua X Ante will search almost the entire deck of Digimon besides the hybrid and the other level 4 Weedmon. And Rafflesia. You don't search Rafflesia with it. But then one thing a lot of people forget is at the end of attack, when Grandis restands, he does suspend another Digimon. So if you have the Akua or alive, don't forget your opponent will lose another memory. Question for you, because I can tell you from my perspective. When I played in Nats, I didn't quite make day 2, I went X3. But in all those sets, I think I had maybe 2 or 3 games I just had this perfect stack. And I didn't check options, so I won the game. How often did that come up for you?
I very rarely checked an option that just ruined me. I think I checked an option against the Melga deck, and I think I checked one Chaos Degradation, but, it doesn't really matter too much. If the Mastamon doesn't have Retaliation under it, you just swing at the stack, and you build up faster than they do.
You also suspend them, if in case they do block with Retaliation, right?
Absolutely. But you want to attack the stack if possible, for sure.
Yeah, but the high roll stack is a great feeling at times when you just feel like you might be outraced. You can just win the game out of nowhere.
Absolutely. I know there's this one time, I think it was game 7, And I was like super worried. I was like, I really want to make day two. And I sat down and he was playing Black War. I just drew the perfect hand row, stood up after 9 minutes, and I was like, that felt great. Can that happen the rest of the day? But and it didn't, but yeah, feels great.
Yeah. Anyways, but now we're going to elaborate more on the Rafflesia tech, or the Raffles tech. I do have to give a shout out to Demolished. He is the one that mentioned running Rafflesia. I thought it was kind of a bad idea at first, but after some more thought and then finally playtesting it, it did come up to be really helpful. My playtest group's Black War list ran 2 BT5 Omni X, so it was very common they would get the Omni X against me, and I hated the fact I would just lose the game because they would have Grey X protection to protect against Grandel Soul. Even if they spent the whole 10 memory, you just didn't feel like there's a way to respond. You attempt to swing over it twice with Grandis, they'll just negate those attacks. But what we found is Rafflegiamon, in theory, if they spend 6 memory on the Omni X, you can go into your Grandis over Grand Kuaga, attempt to swing over twice, and then start digibursting 2 cards every turn to stun that Omni X so it won't clear your board, and it will let you go wide and build a second stack, build a Mimi or play a Mimi to hatch and build in Raising. I know in your run, you didn't really run into BT5 Omni X. I ran into one, and it did help in that matchup. Did you have any other matchups where Rafflegiamon came up?
Yeah, Rafflegiamon won me both games of a set against a Black War deck, and I never even saw the Omni X. There was one game where I didn't see the Grandis. I just saw Grand Kuwagamon and Rafflegiamon, and I didn't have a way to swing over 13k. And Grand Kuwagamon, if he digibursted the egg, would be 13k. So I went Okua X over Okua to suspend their guy, and then went Rafflegiamon for 3. And then when I digibursted Yokomon, it made me 15k. So it was a very niche move that was able to win me the game as it swung over the stack. And it was something that no other card in my deck besides Grandis could have done. So it was like a 5th Grandis, I guess. And then the second game, I had 3 memory, and I had a niche play where I was able to Digivolve for 3 over a rookie into a hybrid, and then Digivolve Grandis for 1 in order to choke to 1. And they had a Black War exit, or
A Grey
sorry,
X.
a gray, and they needed the 2 to be able to, obviously go crazy. And so that choke to 1 won a game. So it definitely lets you play with memory a lot more.
Yeah, and just to elaborate, you kind of cut out there, but basically Grey X and Raising 2 Cool Boys on field. Choking them at 1 denies them Cool Boy value and denies them a level 5 where they can really start clapping you back.
Yeah, I'd imagine he had the Greymon in back, Grey X in back, just because he probably was digging for the 5 that he didn't have, or else he should have just held it in hand.
Yeah, but it's so
16,
cool.
so I'd imagine he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, it just has a really cool way of, like you said, playing with memory thresholds, and for me, it came up against armor, also stunning Magnamon X if I couldn't go for game.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was definitely the time in top 8 where it would have put a game 3 against the cross player if I wouldn't have checked Akari and security. A bunch of stuff happened. It's complicated, but it would have made a game 3 scenario. And I would have felt pretty confident in top 4 as the other 3 decks in top 4 were all Black War decks.
Yeah. If you guys ever watch a stream, I will say you definitely had a high roll against your, I would say, mid roll at best. Like, you had the game to play in game 2, you just got a little unlucky. You couldn't get the blocker Kabu and Raffles done at the same time.
Yeah, because the Akari played Darulu, which deleted the rookie. And if I would have digivolved into the blocker Kabu first, wouldn't have been able to digiburst with Rafflesia first. So I really wanted to Rafflesia stun and go blocker to choke him to 1.
Yeah, because like the other line of plays, you Digivolve for Rafflesia over Grandis after you do your first 3 checks. You stun, you swing over, and then you just don't get the piercing, because to have piercing, you do have to be Insectoid, which Rafflesia isn't for 1 key.
Yeah.
But anyways, that being said, that's the idea of the Rafflesia tech, and now we can go over the deck list as a whole. This is a straight green, or not FTK, but a straight green OTK build. The whole concept is if you can, you build up your stack as fast as possible. If you can't build up your stack, you search with a green memory boost or Kokua. If you can't do that, then you set up a Mimi. One thing that I think is very unpopular with people right now is running two tamers. Uh, just real curious, what's your thought and approach in that? Do you think you would have preferred playing Davis over that at high counts, or do you like the idea of two tamers?
I definitely like the idea of two tamers if a Digimon deck had maybe 55 cards in it per tamer, but I can't think of a single card in this list that I would cut for a tamer. Maybe I would end up having cut the Rafflesia down to one for another Mimi potentially, but I don't think so. I would have thought about it though. You just don't want to spend four memory to not be going through your deck. Every time you spend memory, you want to be seeing new cards due to the memory use, and it's just kind of a big net negative for that.
Yeah, which is why I understand people like the Davis. But the one thing I didn't like about it is you can't Evo over Davis with your traditional green line. You're just always more consistent in that regard.
Yeah, if you're playing Davis, you're pretty much committing to not playing the green hybrids, and then all of a sudden 8 level 4s instead of 10, because you're playing the blue level 4s, which don't digivolve up your stack. And then I don't know. I see the pros and cons to it. I definitely think build would probably be more fun to play, as it'd be fun to Ice Wall and Megadeth people. But I definitely think the pure green build is the consistent way to go.
Yeah. Now, this is something that I got from my friend Ivan. He runs 3 Grandel Souls. This card, the statistic idea of cards at 3 counts is you will see at least one in your security in a best of 3. Statistically, I think it's like a 29% chance you'll see at least one. Could have more, but that's the idea of the high count. It helps leverage that Melga matchup, where if they high roll OTK, check Grandel Soul, it puts you ahead. Or if you go against any other stack deck, you can punish them. But it's not something you rely on. It's just statistically there, and there is other cons of Grandel Soul or pros of Grandel Soul as well.
Yeah, Grandel Soul came up way more times in my hand than in security. I think it came out of security like I think it flipped up one time in security, not like the whole day, but it won one game because of the security effect. Like there's times it flipped up in security on games like I'd already had my stack built. It didn't matter at that point. But it only won me one whole game flipped up in security. But it won me like probably 3 or 4 games just hard playing it from hand.
Yeah. And one thing people don't realize, there is a cost reduction on it, but if you're playing Grandis, you typically don't get it. The only reduction per se you would get is having Akua Aura live and then you playing it, because they'll lose a memory if you suspend another guy. It's niche, doesn't really come up. But just one other card I do want to talk about, the X-Ante option. I personally consider the X-Ante option a staple in Grandis decks at a 1 of. Would you agree with that? Is there extra points you want to add to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Never 2 copies, never 0 copies. That card saved my life multiple times, and I never drew it and was kind of annoyed by it. So it's never really been an. And there's not really like a whole lot of cards you'd think about cutting too much in the deck. Because if you think about cutting a Grandel Soul, there's not really a whole lot you'd put in. Like you don't have any other searchers you could add of any sort. So I think I'd keep it at 3 for sure.
And then the X-Ante option at 1?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. 100% X antibody option needs to stay in the deck.
Yeah.
And 4 green memory boost is essential. I think pretty much the only thing you can even play with in the deck list is the tamer count. It's just the last 4 in the deck list. I think everything else is pretty staple. Besides if you play just like switch a couple of the rookies, but
Yeah, my build, I had one more Pamu over 1 BT10 Kokua because I was scared of Mastemon being more prevalent. But
I personally like the Kokua more just because there are niche scenarios where you have 3 memory and you're digging for a piece and you'll slam the Kokua and then Digivolve into Kokua X just to thin 1 extra card. And I think in a deck that is notorious for bricking, anything that can give you an extra card is something huge.
yeah. But anyways, I just want to wrap up this video with like one quick line of thought is the upcoming Ultimate Cups. Anyone who doesn't know, you have to build a deck built around the color of the egg you have. So in this example, we have Yokomon. You have to build a purely green deck. You can't use any pure white cards. You can use dual colored green cards, but you have to have green in the actual card color, and it has to be searchable by a memory boost, basically, if it's a Digimon, is the concept. But in the Ultimate Cup format, they also put the Grand Promo to 1, which would hurt this deck. You don't get the X-Ante option. So I brought up some cards here at the bottom that I think are probably the most considerable to add. What are your thoughts on that, though?
I think that the old Hokuamon that gives security attack +1 is 1000% essential in the Ultimate Cup format if you were to play the deck. I think it might be kind of crazy cutting both Pamu and Terrier. I think that'd probably be bad. I think you'd probably just cut your BT10 Kokua for it.
I mean,
I'd imagine.
You could do both, though, too. I don't think it'd be wrong to do both and just up your rookie count.
Yeah, you definitely want 4 of the old Kokua that gives security attack +1 because your OTK potential plummets without Grand Kuwaga promo. You definitely want to run 2 to probably 3 of the starter deck Grand Kuwagamon, as it is a way. It does nothing basically. It just gets Grandis and unsuspend. And I guess it says it gives it +3. Is I read
+4.
DP? Is that right?
+4.
So that actually matters. It carries over. I know that there's Black War stacks that try to hit 18k on your turn for that.
Yeah, so, especially with the black base builds, I expect to probably see a little bit more of that in Ulti Cup.
Yeah, and I guess you would probably cut Weedmon for Stingmon, since the odds of it getting Digibursted plummets.
Yeah, and then you have more beat stick stacks. That's why I call it when you just have a Grandis swinging over things. You're not going for the OTK, but you control the board, which is a very fair way for the deck to be originally intended, right?
1000%. I definitely think the biggest misplay that people do with Grandis is that they have this mentality that they need their perfect stack and they need to win the game. It's, in the end, if you have a tempo play you can do that can shut your opponent out, you just go for it. Like maybe you miss your Okua promo, you just have Okua X, you just Digivolve into it in the back. You miss Grand Kuwagamon, you slap X antibody, and you swing passing turn into their. Like if it clears the board, you go for it. Like you always, I mean, most of the time. If it's like security control or something, obviously not. But if in a tempo matchup, you definitely just go for the board.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, that is everything I really want to go over in this video. Do you have any other last minute comments you want to say to anyone watching? I think you should leave Reflagimon in for Ulti Cup format. I'd probably play one of it. I think I'd probably go up to 4 Grandel Soul for Ultimate Cup format. I think that would be spicy and nobody would see it coming. But that's just personally what I would do if I played this deck in Ulti Cup. Yeah, it's probably my deck I'm playing for regionals, to be honest. I do want to get my Nats invite, and this is what I've definitely put a lot of time into.
Absolutely. And shout outs to Joe for letting me borrow this deck. Is it Joe?
Yep, it's Joe.
Joe, yeah. I was saying Joe Gonzalez, right?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, shout out to Joe Gonzalez. You're awesome. Because my girlfriend played our Grandis list. It looked exactly like this.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, thank you so much for your time today. If you guys enjoy this content, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. With that being said, take care, y'all, and have a nice one.